when we adopt the agenda, and we'll be ready to rock and roll.
Hi, Fred.
All right.
Is that a revised one up there?
That is a revised one up there.
How's it going, Aaron?
Yours is good. It's solid. There should be 2 items under the superintendent. And no. That's consent. Yep, and then there's 3 more coming in the addendum. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the September board meeting of the Alexander Local Board of Education. Can I have a call to order and roll call?
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here. Mrs.
Mrs. Edis?
Here.
Mr. Regan?
Here.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with liberty and justice.
Way out of sync.
Yeah, that one was first day of basic. That was quick. All right. We have an adoption of the agenda, and before we do that, we have a new item for the consent agenda. We have, for the treasurer's recommendations, we have approved the following budget and proposed statement for FY 2022 Junior High Science Olympiad, and we have items C, D, and E for the superintendent's regular recommendations, and that's recommended that the Board of Education approve the assignment of Morgan Grinstead to Spartan Academy for the 2021-22 school year. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the enclosed agreement with Athens County Children's Services, and it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the hiring of 3 CDL bus drivers as full-time substitutes at step 0 of the salary schedule for the 2021-22 school year, and this will be funded through the ARP COVID funds. And then we have for board-initiated business, we have an item of discussion, the ARC flooring and track improvements.
Blake, would now be a good time to, there was an item from last month that didn't make it onto either of these. Would now be a good time to put that on board initiated also for the sake of it?
You can do that.
Just the revisiting the June decision on the CDC guidelines to make sure we adopt the K-12, so that way our whole, the whole quarantining method that we're using is applicable.
So also the K-12 guidelines for CDC, right?
Yes.
So adopting the K-12 guidance from the CDC. That is under the board-initiated business. So that was my motion.
Oh, second.
Okay, Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
We have public participation for agenda items. And we have a special presentation for the track renovation committee.
Hi, everyone. Russ Norris again. Just coming before you to give you an update. I want to first thank you for the opportunity to be able to be here tonight and to give you this update. First, one item. We only have 2 items to update you on, so be short and sweet, hopefully. The first one is, in the last board meeting, we told you we're going to have a community meeting to give them our ideas and get feedback for that. After the board meeting, we realized that September is the most busy month for Albany with the fair and Pawpaw Festival, that we didn't think it was right to put something else on the community to see if they wanted to come and join us for that, as well as everyone in the committee is involved in volunteering for both events. So we are still going to have it. We're just going to push it back a little bit. So that's the first update, and just to let everyone know that we will be doing that. The second update is in regards to the last board meeting, we talked about having committee members meeting with the board's facility management team and the administration to fulfill what the board had requested, and that was to seek professional design services and to provide more accurate figures on the project. This group did meet, and they have reached out and contacted Sportsworks Designs, and that is an architectural, surveying, and engineering firm, and they have built over 300 sports complex projects, so someone that knows what they're doing. We just received that scope of service back yesterday, that agreement back yesterday, and hopefully that all of you have received a copy of that, and my understanding is that you guys will be reviewing that later in the board meeting. Like yourselves, we've only had it for 24 hours, so we've been kind of digging through it. The agreement does give us a lot of information in regards to cost to professional services, but we believe that it may be somewhat premature to seek this type of a full agreement, because it's a true turnkey management service, because I don't think that fulfills exactly what you guys have requested. So what is happening is we've attempted to reach out to them today, and we have not received a phone call back. Obviously, in one day, we didn't expect to, but we were trying to hopefully get some answers. And that primarily, first question is this agreement scalable? And what I mean by that is, in the agreement, as you will be able to see later on, there are multiple steps that they have, item 1 through 8, essentially. Are we scalable to be able to do 1, 2, 3, and that's it? And what would those costs be? We have some of those costs already within that packet, but what we need to answer are, can we just do 1, 2, and 3 and stop there, so we can answer your question is, what is this project going to cost? So that is our recommendation, is to give us the time to be able to get that answer from them. But what we're seeking from you is that you will continue to support us and the administration in seeking that answer, so that when they do come back and say, yes, we can do that, that we can move forward immediately so that we can get this thing going, so we can answer your primary question, is what is this project going to look like and cost? Okay? That is our update. Any questions?
No, sounds appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Russ.
Yep. I should ask, do you want us to hang around for you guys have that discussion on that, or do you want to just have that with the administration? You do have board facility members that are here, so,
It'd be great if you could stay,
okay,
from my perspective.
okay,
I don't know about
Sure.
others.
Item 6, we have the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
For treasurer's recommendations, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the enclosed appropriations resolution for the fiscal year 2022 and certify to the county auditor.
Moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
And Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Under Superintendent's recommendations, item A, we have employ the following for the 2021-22 school year, pending their meeting all state and local requirements. We have Kathy Dugan, substitute bus driver, and Brittany Fulton, substitute food service.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Item B, it's recommended that we approve the placement of Erin Thomas at step 12 of the board-approved salary schedule, pending her meeting all state and local requirements and verification of prior experience.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Item C, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the assignment of Morgan Greenstead to Spartan Academy for the 2021-22 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Item D, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the enclosed agreement with Athens County Children's Services.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Item E, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the hiring of 3 CDL bus drivers as full-time substitutes at step 0 of salary schedule for the 2021-22 school year. This will be funded through ARP COVID funds.
And just for clarification, this is also with insurance benefits.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. I'll start the discussion. I just want to confirm that this is a one-year contract, long-term sub. It's not a renewable it's just on COVID funds, correct?
Correct.
Any other discussion item?
No, that's good clarification.
Roll.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Under board-initiated business, we have the discussion of the art flooring and track improvements. I would suggest that we start with track improvements, and I'll make a motion to bring that to the floor.
Second. Sorry, Liz.
Discussion items. I'll start with, from what I've looked at, I don't have enough time to digest, and I agree with Russ and what your committee has found, that we need to discuss a little bit more about what options we have as far as that turnkey option goes, and look at what the numbers, because that's just correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just the contractor, the fees that go along with it. That has nothing to do with the material and labor costs. That's just his consultation fees,
Yes.
correct?
And Nate Schaller and I talked about this contract and just taking time to break it down, going for a preliminary draft of the track, and then moving forward from there instead of the whole package deal. Nate, come on up. That right now we would like to see just a preliminary drawing of what they think they can do.
With the preliminary budget.
Yes. Yeah, so as you go through it, the scope of work that they're looking at, they kind of number it 1 through 8. We've talked a lot by text in the last couple hours, just before this meeting even. 1 is a core sample. We still feel that's that's needed, because if there's an issue below, all the estimates are going to be off. If you just think we're going to go in and be able to just put blacktop down, if there's a core issue, you're going to need to know right away, because that's going to be a costly repair to start the base of the construction. So step 1, you got to know what the core sample is. The survey is essentially how they are going to then come up with that site plan for you. So those 2 steps have to be done. And essentially, as you go through that, number 3 would then be your schematics and get you those cost estimates. The basics. It's not going to give you detailed of how the construction is done, because I think that is step 4, but 1 through 3 is what you need. But it doesn't tell us what step 3 cost is.
Mr. Norris, can you make sure they add in football and soccer field and goalposts?
That would be a part of, if they have to shift the field,
Okay, yeah.
then yes, that would be a portion of that. So in their example that they would give, if they have to shift the field and put the lanes, let's say, towards the visitor stands, which is essentially what they're discussing in there, then yes, you would have to shift the field, and yes, that would be a part of the cost of moving the goalposts and all that. So I wouldn't expect anything less, that if they're doing something that major, that they would put that in the cost estimate, so.
Yeah.
All right.
The other thing I would point out, I don't know who's going to have that discussion, the one thing I did see missing, and maybe I just overread it, is the discus, shot put, high jump, long jump. I did not see included in that.
Part of it is within, it says that it can be done within the oval. Other part says that it will be allotted for, even though the outside scope of the survey does not allow for it, they are saying that it is allotted for.
So they say all
They're
field
contradicts,
events.
Yeah, they
yes.
have field
Yeah,
events,
they
they
contradict,
just
they
don't
contradict.
They don't
what's-
spec, okay.
It's
all right.
there.
Yes.
All right.
It's there.
Yes.
It's covered, it's
there,
just
but
not
it's not.
explicitly stated.
Correct, but
Correct.
we will
Gotcha.
make sure that is in their
Okay.
estimate of it, yes.
So what are we being asked to do tonight? Because I agree, 1 through 3 is what we ideally need. And according to their timeline, that gets us into November anyway. What are you asking us to do tonight?
I think that we just move forward and we focus on items 1, 2, and 3. When Mr. Schaller has some free time, he and I can call the engineer and have a discussion. Then we will have to also advise with Bricker and Eckler how to properly bid this out. So I think our focus is 1, 2, and 3 for now, correct?
And if we have to, you mean bidding out the assessment, coming up with the preliminary drawings and costs? If that's lower than 50,000,
And if that's the threshold, that's fine, which
I think that's for bidding out.
then we would move forward with it to get that portion to come back with you for the figures. I just want to make sure that that is understood.
I'll say your request at the beginning, and I can't scroll far enough up with all the, but you have my support to keep going. If you ask for the support to continue seeking those answers, you have my full support. And I think you're on the right track.
Okay.
I think what would be appropriate is if the board would make a motion to authorize the superintendent and the treasurer to enter into an agreement for those preliminary services to get you the deliverables with the estimated costs, kind of starting point of the project. Nothing near what
Not
they are
number
bringing
4.
is if they were actually doing the job
Okay.
from start to finish.
1 through,
Yeah.
But if you grant us the authority to enter into a contract, and if you even want to set a threshold up to not to exceed a certain amount, then that will allow us to negotiate a contract with them to do the preliminary work.
okay, and so legally, we would have to bid out anything over 50,000 anyways, correct?
Not just for architect services. That's
Not for-
the $50,000 threshold is not a threshold for any and all purchases.
Okay.
That's only for construction of a school building. But there is an RFQ process that we legally have to go through before we can even procure architect services. So we can't even really approve this agreement as it stands tonight anyway. But we can enter into an agreement with them to do the preliminary work, bring it back to you guys so that you have something to even base your decision on,
I got
instead
you.
of just, rough estimates. So all we would need from you is the authority for the superintendent treasurer to enter into a contract with,
For the preliminary agreement?
yeah, with the architect or engineering firm to bring you those preliminary documents and information that you guys are interested in. And then, like I said, you can set a not to exceed amount, so then that way we know that if it goes over that amount, then we'll have to come back to you guys and figure out how we want to proceed.
So I would then turn to Mr. Schaller. What is that, I don't, you can tell me you're not, I have no idea what that amount typically,
Well, they have 5,500.
right,
I mean, typically, I would think in the ballpark of 10 to 15 would be a guess.
10 to 15?
I would concur with that based on my conversations with.
But that would be that design portion of it. You still have those items 1 and 2, which is a total of $9,000. The core samples and the actual survey. Because you really can't get to number 3 without doing 1 and 2.
Oh,
You're at 15 or 20 to get through task 3.
so 20 is, at most 20 is safe?
I
Well,
would
if you
love to
said-
say yes, but I have no idea what
We
they're
said
coming back
this-
to say.
If we said the survey was between 10 and 15, and then we have that other 9, if we say not to exceed the amount of 25,000,
I think that's fine.
I would think that would,
That should
does
be-
anybody have any
No.
comment? or-
You're actually, you're in good shape there, because if the cost can't exceed 25,000, or we have to go through a RFQ process for the architect as well.
Well, I'm right on,
So-
I'm right on there, so
So
let's
if
go
their services
24,999.
are more than that, then we can't negotiate directly with them on the services anyway. We have to go through a process for
Okay.
the architect, so.
so less than 25,000.
Less than 25,000, so I'm not going to even pretend to recall your motion. I make the motion to, for the superintendent and treasurer, I authorize them to have the authority to enter an agreement with an architect or engineering firm for that preliminary survey data not to exceed the amount of 25,000.
And specifically Sportsworks up to level 3, number 3. Second.
Any discussion items on this? Roll.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Now, in the other item, we
I
have,
have questions about this project still.
okay,
So Aaron, at our next meeting, maybe we'll get ideally a draft whole
For the
capital.
Capital improvement plan? Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So then we'll be able to possibly fit this in with the capital improvement plan to see
Well,
how that
yeah,
goes.
you will have the capital improvement plan, and you will be able to see what is projected out there for the next 5 years, and then
Okay.
how this would fit into it if you want.
And who is responsible? This is just construction. There are other costs involved, such as the fees and upkeep, and who is responsible for, when we get the overall project to take a look at, coming up with all of the costs, all of the possible costs, or at least as many as we know, not just constructing it?
I would assume that the design firm should be able to give us some estimates for ongoing maintenance.
Okay. because
I
there's
think
no
that's one of the
cost
fee
involved.
the fees in there. There's a later on
And they
some
said,
assumptions.
"Don't pay those fees. You pay those fees."
Well, there are assumptions that they have listed in there. They are very detailed on some and very vague on others. So such as, their concept right now is they wouldn't have anything to do with stands, okay? Unless we tell them, hey, we want to change the size of the stands because we have field seating right now and we need to increase. They don't know that. So until we tell them that, so things like that, they're assuming some things. One of those things would, as a service would be future costs that you would have of replacement, those type of things, so you would know down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just want to remember there's more costs
That is correct.
I'm done now.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Now, the other part of that, we have, I'll make a motion for the discussion on the arc flooring.
Second.
Discussion, and then, Lindy, you brought this to our attention on Thursday. Do you have any, I don't have that sheet in front of me, what you brought to us on Thursday.
Yes, that sheet I gave you, and I sent it to the Facilities Maintenance Committee, and I shared it with Lucy when Blake and Lucy came in. We have some money left over in the ARC fund, around $32,000. We also have an outstanding pledge of $10,000, which is around $42,000. So I asked Brian McCollum to go ahead and get an updated quote to rubberize the top floor. The quote came in around $54,000. It's over $50,000, so we would have to send it out to bid. So I wanted the board aware of where we stood on the ARC and the completion of the ARC. So you're looking at about $12,000 deficiency that if the board decides to move on this, that could come from the general fund, and we could complete and rubberize the top floor.
Does that 32,000 that you referenced, does that include the 9 that we just approved to accept from the boosters?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
And not to throw a wrench into the whole thing, but I talked to our contact at Bricker, who we discussed the track and the use of ESSER funds for the track, and he said that he thinks that the doing the top floor of the ARC would absolutely be something that we could work into the ESSER funds as well, if that's something that you wanted to consider.
As opposed to the general fund.
Correct. And we would have to go back into the CCIP and make those adjustments.
Yeah, there's several steps that we would have to go through to move forward with it, but I did just want to let you know that you do have that other avenue of funding that you could allocate towards that, if you were interested in doing that.
So if I am, now this would be that $50,000 threshold where we would have to go through the the bidding process.
Yeah, yes, you would have to go through the bidding process for that project.
So do we need to make a
Regardless
decision
of how
tonight
you
about
fund it.
anything?
I'm sorry?
So do we need to make a decision tonight about anything? Are you asking us
I
to
would-
put it out for bid again?
Yes, we would like to put it out to bid again and finish that second floor. But it takes time and some paperwork to put together, so the question is, would the board like us to move on that and go ahead or wait?
And you would like to move on it?
Yes.
Two questions about the proposal. Do we have any estimate of what the costs are for the items that are explicitly called out that are excluded? For example, the cleaning of the surface, leveling it if need be, base moldings, thresholds, things along those lines.
No, we do not. That would go out to bid.
Yeah,
And then-
the proposal that's in there, sorry, Josh, the proposal that's in there, if we move forward in any way with that, that's really nothing more than just a reference at this point, because it would have to go through the entire
Yeah.
sealed bid process.
Okay. The second part to ask about is, this one also points out specifically that it's non-prevailing wage. If we do the ESSER funds, we have to use prevailing wage, correct?
Absolutely. That's why I was saying this is just a reference point, because that number could go up
Oh, it
once they
will.
realize if they have to do prevailing wage.
Yeah, it will.
And that's the question, if it's only 12,000, do you want to do the prevailing wage, or do you want to just use general funds?
I'd prefer to see bids to see how bad it's going to be, see what that 12,000 really is. We've already seen enough times where, especially a snake bid as it's been, the number we start with isn't the number we finish with.
I would just like to add to that, I think if you need, do you need a motion to go to, do you need the authority, again, to go to the bidding process? I would ask that.
If you want us to actually put it out to bid yeah, then you would make a
Then-
motion.
I'll make that, I will make that motion to put it out to bid, as it is my belief we need to get that building finished. It was my understanding that the $250,000 that we originally set aside from the wellness funds to get that building completed would have it completed. It hasn't, but we need to get that building done. And so I will make that motion to start that bidding process and get this thing out from underneath us.
Can we put a cap on it, just to help digestion of it here? So that way if it comes in at, say,
Well, we don't have to go
60,000.
through with it. This is just to go to
No,
the
but
bidding process.
but if it comes in at a number we can stomach, it lets them just move
Oh,
on
let's
instead of
move
waiting
forward.
another
I
month.
get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I
mean,
understand what you're saying.
if we're wanting to get it done, can we cap it at 60,000? Then if it comes in at that price or below, they can move forward and not wait for us another
Are
month.
they listening who are going to bid on it?
Could be.
That's the
Go
thing,
back and watch.
public
I'm joking.
records.
Oh,
It's out
well,
there.
yeah, I mean, if we set a limit, I mean, if I'm the only one bidding, I'm gonna put it at what our limit is.
$2.
Yeah,
TBD.
so,
42,000.
but that way, we don't punt this down another month.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But the bidding process takes roughly 3 weeks, correct?
Yeah, it'll take at least that. The other thing that I think that we should be able to do, I don't see why we couldn't, is we could have them bid if prevailing wages are required and versus if prevailing wages are not required. And then that'll give us the option, and then we can decide, do we think it's better to go with the ESSER funds
And that,
versus.
I
the
think we go
general fund?
with the two bid prevailing wage and not, and we meet at the next board meeting and put it off and have those two numbers.
Without a top.
If we can get it back that quickly.
If we can get it back that quickly, correct.
Absolutely.
And that way, we can determine whether which fund we're going to dig into if we are going to.
I'll second Blake's motion. I don't think there was a second.
Any other discussion items on that?
I just want to point out, I know that we're talking about different pots to pull the funding from. To me, it's all tax dollars. So I don't make in my mind much separation between what is school general funds, what is ESSER funds, and what is different funds. To me, it's all tax dollars.
Other discussion items? Roll.
Mr. Collins,
Read it to us one time, please, Aaron, just make sure we're all on the same page.
this motion is to authorize us to move the superintendent and the treasurer to bid out the finishing of the second floor of the ARC, to accept bids for the finishing of the second floor ARC.
Prevailing and non-prevailing.
Both prevailing
Okay.
and non-prevailing. Yeah. Not to enter into any agreement to fix it or to complete it, but just to bid it.
Thank you. Yes, I'm in favor of that.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Any other discussion items on that topic?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to require masking inside all Alexander events with medical, for sports events, sport events. You walk inside the school building, you put a mask on. With the exception, just like with students, medical reasons. Going back to the way we were last year, basically.
I will second to move it to the floor.
Do you want to add shields for teachers and staff who need the shields instead of the mask?
Well, that's what I was gonna start that. In the discussion, I would like to add to that motion the use of face shields, and I don't know the wording of extraneous
was last
stressing, yes. When you're stressing out physical activity, I don't know, I can't remember the wording it used, but
Exceptions for
Exceptions, yeah.
exceptions.
physical exertion?
Yes.
And my thinking is this. I wish I would have done it at the last meeting, but I was brain dead and tired. It's not rocket science to know that whenever we allow meetings to happen inside without masks, we share COVID if we're close. And there's really no separation between our students and our staff and our community. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was driving by Oblenis and I looked over. I was trying to drive, so I wasn't looking very long, but there were tons of people outside. Apparently, our hospitals are getting slammed. And I'm not as worried about cases. I'm more worried about hospitalizations and people passing. And that is a 2 to 3 week lead time between being exposed to being really sick. So it's time. So I made the motion.
The only other discussion I personally would add to that is I've also in contact with the health department and everything else. One of the big things that I have come to understand a little bit more is how the authority to make such mandates has shifted into local hands. They can only recommend, they can't go anywhere beyond that. And so really their recommendation is as strong as they can do, and it's put into our hands as to how we want to handle that recommendation.
So what are you saying? The health department recommends that we mask up?
Yep, and it is now our authority based on the way that the legislature has taken away their ability to make a mandate. It is now our authority at a local control state to use that recommendation, use the data they provide to make a decision based on their recommendations. But that is as high as they can go as recommend.
Good. I have a couple comments. The board in the past, we have criticized, this goes back a few years, but we've criticized getting information and proposals at the 12th or 11th and a half hour. You can go back and watch the YouTube videos. There's been remarks made and chastised about walking into a meeting not knowing what was going to be proposed. Mr. Regan texted me at 4:30 tonight, and when I got done with work, I called him at 5. This is the first I've heard about it. Now, that being said, I'm not necessarily opposed to the motion. Dynamics have changed in the community for the last couple weeks. I would like to see it mirror, or if it does, mirror our guidance that we readdress it on the 20th of October.
Yes, I'm in.
Okay, good.
Agreed. Thank you.
The only other problem I have is bringing this up right now. The public has no idea that this is even being discussed. We are kind of backdooring this without we didn't let anybody speak of the probably 50 to 70 people that showed up at the special meeting, and they walked out of here livid. Now we're bringing it up kind of backdoor. Like I said, I'm not opposed to the policy, and I'll tip my hand. I will support this. I don't like the way it was done. Thank you.
Readdress on October
20th.
20th board meeting.
And that matches our current indoor policy that ends at 2:30 or 2:45. And make it effective tomorrow.
Okay. I'm just going to get ready to I'm trying to make comments to make a true motion to amend the original, if there's any other discussion items prior to that.
Just one last comment, this is to the board. If we're going to do this, let's at least discuss it before 5 o'clock the day of the meeting, please. And make it to the public so they can come and have their say. Thank you.
So there's one part,
Ms. Ball, it's all you. Do you mind going to the mic so people at home can hear you. I apologize, but I appreciate it.
While we give Ms. Ball a second, I think it's fair to point out, Jay, the governor was on the TV today, didn't let any of us know, implored us all, as school board members, called us all out specifically to deal with this head on
And
by masking
we-
up fully.
we
And
can
I
deal
hear
with
what you're saying. I'm not trying to bait you into discussion or anything like that. I hear what you're saying, but remember the environment. We've loved to say it's fluid. And-
We do, and we could have a special meeting anytime and give the public a chance to know what we're doing.
Okay. That's a fair comment.
Ms. Ball?
Ms. Ball?
Okay, I did a volleyball game a week or so ago. The junior varsity couldn't play because the other school was quarantined, they couldn't come. So it was just the high school, and we had a lot of people there, just for the high school ball game. But many of the people came in with masks, and since we only had it till, 2:45, they took them off, you know. So there were a lot of people that were prepared to have masks on for that ball game. You know, with that many people in the gym, we probably should have it. Okay.
Thank you.
And you're putting the piece about shields. for
Yeah,
staff.
so, which is in the current guidelines for 7:45 to 2:45, correct? 7:30 to 2:45?
No, it just says masks.
It just says mask. So I'd like to make a motion to amend Lucy's original motion to include, to readdress this on October 20th, effective. Also, it is effective starting tomorrow. It will match the indoor policy with the current policy with the addition of allowing face shields in place.
I'll second it.
All right. Other discussion items?
So 245 was mentioned a moment ago. Is that part of this?
No, it's matching the mask requirement for anybody indoors.
Anytime you enter the
Anytime
building.
you enter the
Okay.
building, all
Okay.
visitors, and then, but it also includes the use of face shields when a mask isn't available, or
The
instead.
CDC exceptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blake, we may want to clarify, for instance, if a janitor is in the building by themselves in a room cleaning, the mask can come down until they are approached by another individual.
Is that the policy we had last year?
That's the CDC guidance right now.
Yes.
Is if you're in your own workspace alone, you can mask off until you are approached
Right,
by.
and that's
another.
why I was stating that's the current CDC guidance. So yes, there's,
I just want to, I would just like to acknowledge Jay's point. He's right. Hear that, Jay?
What am I right
My husband is not used to hearing that. You're lucky.
So first, we have the motion for the amendment of the original motion. We have to first vote on the amendment, and then we can go we vote on the amending of Lucy's motion, and then if that gets approved, we then are,
So we're voting on what you said.
yep,
Okay,
the addition
all right,
of the
that's
readdress, we're voting on the readdressing October 20th. It starts effective tomorrow, and that it matches the masking or face shield of last year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Roll.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, we're at an all-time high on cases, and we're still dealing with way too many quarantines with hundreds of kids literally out. So absolutely, yes, I think this is the right thing to do.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, while I agree with, or don't agree with the individual's choice, I don't think it serves any purpose to put the children in any more danger than what we have to, so it's yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Now we have the motion itself is now, so that was for the amendments, and now we have the motion to actually pass the motion. Roll. Yep, yes, that was the amending, that it was amending the initial motion, and now we're actually accepting the
Got it.
motion.
All right, Mr. Collins?
I just want to be a jerk and say, hey, let's read it again. I'm in, yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Can you just tell us how it's going to change this one? What happens?
After
Any-
2:45, wear a mask.
Any event in the building, indoors,
Just like Walmart, if you walk in, you're expected to be
we're
masked
masked
up.
up.
Sure, yeah.
Correct.
Indoors.
Except for if you're alone.
Alexander students are going elsewhere indoors, then they should also be masked. Like if they're
Correct.
going to an away volleyball game, then our volleyball team would be wearing a mask. Or, you know, like, is it an Alexander policy or is it just a building policy? Because it feels like if we're to protect students elsewhere, you know, like if
You
they're
should have brought that up before.
Where were you 10 seconds ago?
That may already be taken care of.
That's-
That could be-
As they travel, they're already
They
masked
have
on the
to mask
buses.
up on the bus.
And we've
That's-
asked every,
That's federal law.
the teams have been asked to mask up on the bench too. And I know.
Right.
you know, the other teams have. So I think, Melinda, it's already addressed.
Yeah, I'm just picturing like our band is going to, you know, whatever thing, and, you know, like the science will be out and stuff, all the kids are going to be.
Any other on that topic? Then we have the board-initiated business of accepting the K-12 guidance from the CDC and following that. And I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
So it's on the floor. Are there any discussion items that anybody needs to know?
Just for clarification, I'll ask the same question. Somebody please explain what we're voting on.
So if you go back to June board meeting, we said we were not going to follow the K-12 guidance. We were going to follow the general guidance because the summer school did not fit
Gotcha. Okay.
the K-12 guidance in the classroom setting. And so this is, now that we are back in a traditional classroom setting, is bringing back that we are following the K-12 guidance of the CDC and not the general guidance of the CDC.
Okay.
Jay,
Thank you. That was easy.
the biggest thing, Jay, is this flow chart we've been preaching and quoting. It's not valid under our current policy. We're actually not in compliance with our current policy. We need the K-12 so we can follow the
Well,
flow
yeah,
chart.
I mean, now that you can explain it, it makes sense.
What I said last month, and it was sitting in our emails 2 weeks ahead of the last meeting, Jay. Yeah, I'll take the bait.
We're good. Any other discussion items? Roll.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Any other business initiated by board members? Board reports. Then I make a motion to enter executive session for the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of an employee or official, or investigation of charges or complaints against an employee or official.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Yeah, but did he paddle people like Michael?
We are back to order. We have public participation on non-agenda items. Our next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, at 7 PM. Wednesday, October 20th. Yeah, October 20th at 7 PM. 2021. Yeah.
You sticking here or library?
I think we can move back to the library.
Yeah.
Mark, is that
Library.
easier? Mark, library it is. Any objections?
Well, what do we vote? Yeah. It can be determined.
Then let's leave that up to be determined with the hope of being in the library. So then, do we have a motion for adjournment?
Made.
So moved. Second?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis? Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Thank you.